The Tolkien Road, Episode 143, concerning Peter Jackson's Return of the King.
All right, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 the Tolkien Road,
Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, a long walk through Middle-earth. On this episode, we take a close look at Peter Jackson's 2003 film version of Return of the King. Before we get started, why not hop on over to iTunes and leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback? It's a great way to show your support for the show and takes less than a minute. Or you can stop by TolkienRoad.com, learn about previous episodes, and say hey. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/TolkienRoad, and you can find us on Twitter via @TolkienRoad. Thanks for listening, and enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tolkien Road. Episode 143, Return of the King film review concerning Peter Jackson's Return of the King. We'll put it that way.
There you go.
So we've been away for a little while. More to follow on why that is. But first of all, I want to welcome Josh Sosa as a guest to the podcast on this episode. Josh has joined us before. He is the original super fan for the Tolkien Road. The first fan we really got to know a little bit. Reached out to us in the early days. A listener from the very early days of the podcast. So Josh has joined us a couple of times, and we're happy to have him again. So welcome, Josh.
Yes, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So on this episode, we will be discussing, as I said, we'll be discussing Peter Jackson's Return of the King. As we've done so far with The Lord of the Rings, every time we finish one of the three books, or the three books of The Lord of the Rings, or the three sections, you never know what to call them because there's actually 6 books in The Lord of the Rings,
right.
But then the publisher divided it up into
6.
Fellowship of the Ring, 2
books,
Towers, and Return of the King.
Right.
So when we finished Fellowship, we discussed Jackson's Fellowship movie. When we did 2 Towers, we discussed Jackson's 2 Towers movie, and now that we're done with Return of the King, we're going to discuss his Return of the King film.
Right. Yes.
I wanted to say, though, a quick note on the overall plan for the podcast and how that's been changing. So, some of you may be aware, we decided earlier, it was either late April or earlier this month of May, to really kind of change up our schedule a little bit in order to make it, in order to let us accomplish a couple of different things. One being just making it a little more sane for us to keep up with the schedule. We are pretty busy people, and so we just decided, and so sometimes we get going, we have to find a time to squeeze in an episode, and we don't really want to feel like we're ever squeezing in an episode.
Right.
We want to feel like we're doing it from a good place of enjoyment, and having kind of the mental, emotional, spiritual bandwidth to really dive into these things wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
So we decided to, instead of trying to keep up with a weekly basis, which we haven't always been good at, we're going to shift to more of a seasonal format where we will deliberately plot out somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 episodes that we're going to do for a season, based on whatever work we're discussing at that time.
Cool.
And so the plan right now is to do The Hobbit, at least a first part of The Hobbit at some point this summer. And
then will all the episodes be released at once?
And then the plan is to release all the episodes either right at once or very, very, quickly.
Quick succession.
Right.
So you can binge listen.
Yeah, so
Yes.
For those of you who miss... we know a lot of people have binge listened to the podcast in the past, which is really cool to think about. And then they get caught up and they can't binge listen anymore.
Right.
So for those of you who miss the binge listening feel, this one's for you, I guess. So,
yes.
So
for all the binge listeners.
We're excited about it. It's I know for those who have gotten used to listening on a weekly basis, it may be a little bit disappointing, but hopefully the binge listening effect will make up for that when we do release it. And I think this will give us the ability to really keep it going for a long time, which
Yeah.
is what we want to do.
Yeah.
There's so much in the future. We've got to do The Hobbit, which is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a couple of seasons of the podcast, I think, at least.
Yep. Yeah.
There's the Hobbit movies to discuss, and I think by the time we probably get through that, and maybe like the Children of Hurin or something like that, there's going to be a TV show for us to discuss as well, which is exciting.
That's so exciting.
There's also Tolkien biopics coming up, which we'll probably want to. Maybe we'll just do standalone episodes on those,
Cool.
and and
Yeah.
that's the plan. We'll do little standalone episodes
Mm-hmm.
here and there, like this one. Within the to kind of break up the time differences or the lapse between podcast seasons and other things.
That sounds awesome.
So we're excited about it, and a little alarm for me. All right, we're excited about it,
Yeah.
and we hope you are too.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
All right, so that's where we are right now.
Mhm,
That's the plan for the future of the podcast.
Yes.
But let's talk about the movie now.
Yes. Let's do it.
All right, so the Return of the King film. This movie won 11 Oscars. Did you know that?
I did not know that. I'm
Did you
not
know that,
an
Josh?
Oscar watcher.
Yeah, I think I was watching the Oscars that year, and it was the only film to win all of its nominations.
Yeah.
So here's my question: was it just this film, like standalone, or did it take all the films into consideration?
Well, what I feel like I've heard is that it was just for the film because it has to be a film that was released, eligible for, it was released that year
Yeah,
and eligible
okay.
for that year and all that sort of thing.
That makes
But
sense.
what I understand is that really it was the Academy looked at all three, kind of considered they were giving it to all three films by
I
doing
see.
this, right?
So like the Fellowship and Twin Towers, like they didn't, or Two Towers. Two Towers. They.
Boom.
Oh man.
Fail,
You know
total
what? I'm
fail.
just gonna see myself out of this
Yeah,
conversation.
we'll see that.
I'm not worthy. So they. Oh, and there went my
It's okay, it's
phone.
just strike one.
Jeez,
Strike-
that's strike two. All right, I'm on thin ice here. Okay, my question is, so Fellowship and Two Towers, like they didn't clean up like this film did at previous Oscars.
No,
Is
I
that-
don't even think they were nominated for many. If they may have been
Interesting.
nominated
Okay.
for some technical
Okay.
categories,
Okay.
but I don't
Got
think they
it.
won any.
That makes sense. Okay. I just wanted to set the groundwork.
But some of the cool ones. So there was a lot of technical ones, but it won Best
Mhm.
Picture, which is obviously the biggest one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It also won Best Director
Mm-hmm.
and Best Adapted Screenplay. So
Oh, like as far as them like adapting the novel.
right,
to
it was
movie.
based on a previous work,
Okay.
and then Best Original Score.
The music.
So and then a lot of the other ones were more technical
Yeah.
ones.
Got it.
But you can imagine like Best Visual Effects and that sort of thing, like just some really
Yeah. Best CGI.
Well, I think that's visual
Is that
effects.
visual effects? Okay.
Yeah. Probably best sound editing and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But pretty big deal that it won Best Picture
Yeah.
and Best Director. I mean, overall, it's a tribute to what Jackson was able to do with all three of these movies in terms of just the scope of the production.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty incredible thing.
Oh,
I think it's one
yeah.
of the it's one of the most incredible film productions in cinema history. I mean,
It has
it's got
to
to
be.
be. So.
Yeah.
So interesting note on that.
Yeah.
By the way, we are going to discuss the extended edition is what Greta and I watched recently. We've seen it a couple of times before. All 4 hours. It's long. So there's some extra scenes that people might not realize are in that if they haven't seen the extended edition. We wanted to watch that just because it's it takes into more account of everything that was filmed. But I think Josh said you've only seen the theatrical release. You've seen some of the parts in the extended edition, but not the whole thing.
Yeah, the one that I have at home is the theatrical release, but it has most, if not all, of the extended edition scenes as part of special featurettes. So I'm at least more aware of these than I was for the Two Towers ones when we did that a year ago.
Gotcha.
Cool. Right on.
Well, cool. So I wanted to just kind of, I guess we'll go around the horn as we go and just kind of talk about the things that we look at, we noted in the film, things we thought were done well, things we thought weren't done very well, and we'll just do that kind of conversational format like we did last time. I am I guess I'll just go ahead and get us started.
Yeah.
And we'll.
Yeah. You took
feel
notes.
free to
I
weigh
did
in.
not. So I'm gonna be shooting from the hip here.
I'm kind of shooting from the hip too. I just kind of took notes because it's so long. I just didn't want to
Yeah.
forget things, right?
That was smart.
Just made notes of different things that were in the film.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll just start at the beginning. So one of the things I think in general Jackson does very well with all of the films is his openings. I think he does a really good job opening movies, and this one is no different. In the Fellowship, he does the kind of like going back to the telling some of the history, how we got here, right? I love like that. I still remember seeing that in the Fellowship, in the first time I saw it in the theaters. Like that just drew me into the world, right? And I remember with this one, going into seeing Return of the King for the first time in the theaters, like all this build up, like wondering how it was going to be and everything, and then it opens in this unexpected way with this like
Flashback.
like little worm hanging there, right? Up close, and you're like, and it's like this really like kind of like pleasant pastoral scene. You're like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
what's they're doing? And you're like, and you see these two hobbitish kind of figures, and you're like, who are they?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it draws you in. It like really raises your curiosity, and then eventually you realize, oh, that's Gollum.
Right. It's
Right?
Gollum as he used to be.
That's Gollum as he
Yeah.
used to be.
Right.
And I also love this because it's part of the story, right? It's part of it's not necessarily the narrative of the books doesn't work this way, but it's all of that part of Smeagol and Deagle
Right.
is part of the story.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Because you see it kind of flashing back. It really helps, I think, to have that vision of. Because you learn so much from that flashback just of Gollum, because not only do you see the effect the ring has had on him throughout the years, but you also, like, just his, when that whole, like, scene, like, he tries to do the same thing with Frodo that he did to his cousin, right?
Right.
With Deagle, or whatever his name was.
Yes.
So, yeah, you see, like, I feel like that scene from the beginning kind of enters back in to the story in multiple instances throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree. I think that was a good, unexpected, clever way to open it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really it sets up Gollum as an even more sympathetic and tragic figure.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
Because you see how he began. You see what he was in the beginning. He was just like any of the other hobbits, in the beginning. He was just like Frodo, Sam.
Yeah.
Merry, Pippin, any of them, almost lovable in a way at
Yeah.
the beginning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you didn't know his story and just knew that this was another Hobbit, you would think, it's just kind of a lovable little Hobbit character, right?
Absolutely. It sets him up, I think, as to kind of be seen as another victim, right? Of
the ring.
Of the ring. Yeah.
So, and I love his like how they show his progressive transformation from, that character into Gollum, right? Over time.
Yeah.
Josh,
That was
any thoughts on the opening? I think that's the theatrical release opening, right?
Yeah, I think, so lucky me, I've opened up Tolkien Gateway just so I have a good idea of what scenes specifically were not included. Apparently
Smart.
that has an extended version in the extended edition. So I don't know how more extended it is, because I thought it was a pretty long opening to begin with. But I thought it was a great opening. I think I think seeing his physical transformation from Smeagol to Gollum is probably the most significant thing about that. I mean, there's there's the whole beginning and finding the ring with Dagal, but I think the transformation part is what's supposed to really hit you, and I think it works out really well. I think, and it goes immediately into the next scene where they're in the cave and they're making their way to Caer Thungol. So
yeah,
it works.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned Tolkien Gateway, and they might have something very similar to this, but just in the Wikipedia article alone for the film, there's a really good section on the comparison with the source material that is pretty exhaustive. Like, it lists just about every difference between the film and, for better or for worse. No no judgment. It just kind of says here's
just
the differences,
the facts.
right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty complete. There were some things in there that I didn't even pick up on having just read it recently. A lot of it you'll notice if you read it recently, but and there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of
There is a lot.
There's a lot of differences.
Yes.
I do want to note. So we're talking about the Gollum scene, right? What is with in this movie like close-ups of gross mouths eating things, right? Like first you've got Gollum getting the fish. Gollum in the sushi, right?
Yeah.
You got Gollum getting the fish,
the fresh unprepared sushi.
You know, like it was just like the kids. So, you know, first of all, our kids, like I don't know why the good Lord has done this to me, but like our kids are not into Tolkien. And
not yet.
Well, maybe they will be. And you know, I wasn't until I was actually older, but
we have Harry Potter to thank for that, I think.
Yeah, and Marvel now.
Marvel
stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so our kids are watching it with us last night at the beginning, and you know, we knew they weren't going to stick around for all 4 hours, but that scene happened, and we're eating dinner.
Yeah, we were eating dinner.
Or we're watching the movie, and it's like, you juicy sweet fit, you know, like. And it's like, oh,
I had to cover my eyes. I was like, why?
And the kids
why
were just
trying
like,
to eat?
I saw them looking. They were just like, what's happening?
Yeah. I was really regretting our decision to.
Jackson has
while we were watching.
I haven't seen many of Jackson's films before, or haven't really watched any of them. But I know he has a love for like extreme sort of visual things with his early films, and I have to feel like that was a little bit of that coming out.
I mean, not to jump ahead, but I'm one of these people who has to watch like the featurettes for everything. And so when I was watching the featurettes for The Return of the King, there's they're like, all right, so we're gonna give the Witch King a mace. And every time they made a mace, he was like, make it bigger. It needs to be scarier. It needs to be this gigantic weapon, and Eowyn needs to be completely frightened by it. And then with the Mouth of Sauron scene, they're like, how do we make this creepier? What if we make his mouth vertical instead, and so we have it opening out the opposite way? And it was just like, he's an interesting guy.
Yeah, somebody needs to get the Mouth of Sauron a toothbrush. I'm just saying, man. It's like... that the Mouth of Sauron. So the Mouth of Sauron never actually eats anything, but I noticed that it's not just, it doesn't just open like a normal human mouth. It like opens like perfectly it's ovular, but it opens like it opens like in this really weird way if you look at it closely, and it's even more. It's more about, you know, I don't know. It's just really creepy how they pulled it off. I can't exactly describe it, but if you look closely at the way his mouth moves when it speaks, man, it's creepy. It's real. There's something really creepy about it. But you've also got the scene with Denethor, right? When Faramir goes to battle, right?
Yes. And he's got like the tomatoes.
Yeah,
and
he's like eating, and it's like the crunchy,
slipping off his mouth.
Yeah, just like all this, you know, this.
The red. Blah.
So there's something. Jackson was trying to say something about. I feel like he was trying to make a point, emphasize a point about some kind of meta point about eating or something like that with these scenes in this film. Maybe it's how the ring devours you or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, it's just something I've always picked up on with these movies. So it's kind of an odd, or with this movie in particular, it's kind of an odd thing.
Okay.
And then of course you've got Shelob. We'll come back to Shelob, but you know, you do have Shelob's. You know, you see some of Shelob's mouth moving, which I didn't really. I don't want to look at pictures of spiders, but like, I didn't realize. I don't know if spiders actually have a mouth like that per se, but maybe they do. I don't know.
I don't know.
But again, I'm not really interested in that because I'm a kind of an arachnophobe. All right, so good stuff on the opening Gollum scene. The part with the fish is hard to watch. Greta,
yeah.
What do you think? What's something that struck you about the movie?
You know, I really I can't remember what I've said about the cast of characters on our previous movie review episode, so I may be contradicting myself here. But okay. I thought the cast was just I thought was perfect.
Mhm.
I loved all. I thought all of, especially having just read the book.
Yeah.
I thought the characters were just really well cast,
Yeah.
and I thought the acting was really good. I mean, some better than others, but I thought in general, I thought the characters were portrayed very true to their characters in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So
Anyone in particular that you want to highlight?
well, you know I'm biased, but I love Eowyn.
Mhm.
I thought she was awesome. I would have liked to see more of her though.
Miranda Otto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought she was awesome as Eowyn.
Mhm.
And Faramir I thought was fantastic too.
Mhm.
And Denethor. I mean, I thought they were all really good. But I think those three were really kind of a highlight for me.
Eowyn has to be a fun character for actors to play.
Yeah,
you know?
oh, totally. Yeah. I remember when I took a personality test a couple years ago and it had celebrity or whatever people that you're like, and Eowyn was listed as one of them. I was like, yes! Awesome. Even if I maybe lied on some of the answers so I could get that.
Yeah. It's funny, we've been watching Homeland season 5
Yeah,
lately, and Miranda Otto plays a character on Homeland season 5. She's older. She's 10 or 15 years, I guess, removed from making this movie, but she's still. You still look at her and you think Eowyn, right? You think, oh, there's Eowyn.
Yeah.
There's Eowyn, right?
Yeah, I like her much better in Return of the King
she's not
than in Homeland. She's not a good guy in Homeland, but
we don't think she is. But
we
anyway.
don't think she is. Yeah.
Have you seen that, Josh? Do you know what we're talking about with Homeland season 5?
I know the show. I've not watched it, but I was just thinking of there was an episode of Legends of Tomorrow, the DC show.
Yeah.
They've done references to Tolkien before. They had a whole episode where they went back into World War I, and they were trying to get assistance from Tolkien to help them do something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was one of those fun superhero. Well, because the show's basically about time travel, and
so is he actually a character on that episode?
Yeah, he's a character for those two episodes.
Oh, that's
cool. At the end of the second season. But they had a John Noble recently on, and the premise was they needed somebody who had this.
He's Denethor, right? John Noble's Denethor. Yeah.
Yeah. The premise was they needed somebody who had this deep, ominous voice to imitate a different character, and it just so happened that one of the superheroes was watching Return of the King while they're on their time shift, and so they go back in time to the set of Return of the King. They're like, "Hey, John Noble, can you read a couple lines for us?" And
Oh, that's funny.
It's a little, the show doesn't really take itself seriously, so they're allowed to do all these little funny things here and there.
I'll have to go check that out. The episodes of Tolkien. That sounds really cool. John Noble is another one that we watched Fringe, the show Fringe, and he was one of the main characters on the show Fringe for its entire run. And so whenever I see Denethor, I always think of that character. And he's a much more likable character, obviously, on Fringe. But I thought he does. I think he does a good job with Denethor. So I mean, I can't think of anybody who I just think was bad as their particular character. So I do think I agree it was well cast. I mean, Andy Serkis, I think, as Gollum is just brilliant throughout the whole series. What he's able to do. Just the motion capture and the voice and everything, just amazing.
So did we? I know I mentioned the 11. You mentioned a few of the 11 Oscars that this film won. Did anybody pick up Best Actor or Actress or Supporting? No. Huh. Interesting.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why. At least somewhere. I
would
don't
have
think
given it to
anywhere
Sam
nominated.
if I could have.
Yeah.
I think just as he is just brilliant. I feel like
Sean Astin.
Yes, he is just.
Mikey.
He steals the show.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Josh, any other thoughts on the cast?
No, I had no complaints over the cast. I thought the casting was better than the characterization of some characters, but no, I had no problem with the cast.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, do you want to talk about the characterization or anything else? Your turn to bring something up.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna continue to harp on the characterization. I know a lot of Tolkien fans are deeply wounded by Faramir, for example, and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
myself included. But
Well, we talked about this some in the
Did
the
we-
Two Towers
I thought he
episode.
was better in this one, though.
well, it makes sense with the plot of the Two Towers into the Return of the King. But there's a lot of just basic like persona things about Faramir that were neglected as they adapted it into a film.
Yes,
So
yes. I would have liked to see more of both him and Eowyn, for sure.
Well, on that note, well, let's talk about Faramir briefly. I respect that you don't want to harp on it, but let's at least touch on that again because it's been a while since we talked about it with the Two Towers. I think the actor who portrays Faramir does a good job. I do think that Faramir, with his response to Denethor's, in the book, I feel like Faramir was just kind of like, "Yep, sorry, Dad, if you're not proud of me, but I'm still going to do what I think is right." And in this movie, he gets very like mopey, and he goes out and just kind of like, "Well, I guess I'll go charge into this battle I know I'm going to die in, and maybe Dad will be proud of me."
Does
then.
he not? He goes off to battle in the book. Yes?
He does, but it's not in the same sort of context. I mean, Denethor still is disappointed with him, right?
Mm-hmm,
but he's much less like. I guess he's much. Maybe it's not. I don't think he's not hurt by it. I think he's just much less like mopey and
More of a
and
stronger.
down about it. I think he knows that his father is misguided and and that sort of thing, and he's just
Okay.
able to kind of brush it off.
Yeah.
But you've got that, and I was also disappointed that they don't tell more of the love story between Faramir and Eowyn.
Yeah,
at
that
the
was a
end.
huge disappointment.
They just kind of glance
for
at
me,
each other
too.
in the House of Healing.
Yeah, and then all of a
And then-
sudden they're like married. You're like, oh.
Well, were they even married in the?
Well,
in the
I
movie?
think that. I mean, not officially.
was- I guess maybe it was implied,
but it's something
but,
that's
yeah.
alluded to, or that they're going to be married. But
Yeah.
yeah, what Josh? What do you think? What did you want to add anything? Not to heart,
pertaining
but
to Faramir, I mean,
yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just the book characterization I think is better. He's
Yeah.
more relatable.
Mhm.
He's a better character in terms, he's not so melancholy throughout the entire book as he is in the film, and he doesn't have these deep-seated issues with all of the other characters, which is funny because I don't have that issue with Boromir at all. I mean, I think Boromir in the Fellowship of the Ring film is pretty spot on. I mean, and again, I don't think I think Sean Bean did great, and I think Sean Bean would have done great if they changed it a bit too. But there's something that seems a little less graceful in the film Faramir, and so it's a sour point for a lot of people. And I love Faramir as a character.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I wonder. As I'm listening to you guys talk, I kind of wonder if this might be a difference just between a male and a female interpretation. I kind of wonder if Jackson was maybe playing to the female audience with Faramir's character in this movie, because as women, we're drawn to more sympathetic, like, oh, I can help you. Like, as women, we're fixers and we want to be healers and helpers, right? And so maybe by making Faramir, less of a strong character in the movie, he was playing to the female audience and and making him more sympathetic. Because I didn't have that problem with him. I mean, I think he was, I liked him better in the book too, but I wouldn't say it was like a sour point for me.
I just think he's my big beef with him is he's just not as melancholy in the book. Like and I think the same thing happens some with Aragorn in the movie. In the movies, he's a lot more hesitant and a lot more like unsure of himself. And I feel like in the movies, in the books, Faramir and Aragorn are both like they're like strong leaders, right? They know what has to be done in this dire hour, right? And and they're willing to do it, right? And they, if people don't like that, they're okay with that, and they're still going to try to lead them, but they're going to try to do what they believe is right, and they are assured in it, right?
Yeah,
they've got confidence in it, and so I feel like both of those characters in the film are made a little more like melancholy and uncertain, and I feel like I wish I could find, I wish I'd prepared to actually have the bit in the Return of the King, where Denethor and Faramir interact. But I just, in the book, I feel like Faramir, you know, he's not happy that his father isn't happy with him, but at the same time he
doesn't let it affect him.
He doesn't like get in this like despairing like
yeah
melancholy as Josh puts it. You know, he's still a strong character, and he doesn't have this like hurt over his father's disappointment in him. You know, because he knows his father is misguided. You know,
right? But you can't help but feel that hurt. I mean, any human being would be hurt by their parents' rejection. Well, especially wishing that, you know.
Yeah, but there's a strength in being like, that's okay. You know, yes, but there's
but I'm not going to internalize that.
I'm not going to let it stop me from doing what I know is right, and I'm not going to let it get me down. Yeah. Right. I'm not going to let it drag me down. Right. Yeah. That's to me that's a powerful thing about those characters. Right. Is that they're able to rise above that and still do what they know to be
strong
right.
in the face of all that. Yeah, and I would agree what you said about Aragorn. I really thought he was too soft in the last movie, but I felt like he was. I liked his character better in this one. I thought they did a better job of, you know, making him more kingly and, you know, like, what's the right word?
Well, he does become a king at the end. So
I know, but I'm saying I felt the same. I remember thinking that Aragorn was not. He was too soft in the last movie, but I feel like I like the way they characterized him in this film better. I feel like it was more appropriate.
Well, let's go back to Josh, because we kind of jumped into Faramir after he said, "Well, I'm not going to harp on Faramir," and then we've been harping on Faramir. So, Josh, your turn. What topic do you want to? What topic do you want to discuss?
I guess for me, the things that stand out, if not solely certain scenes, because I think certain scenes were done very. I mean, the Ride of the Rohirrim is still probably one of the best scenes visually to see on film or TV, and it gets referenced in some way everywhere. It does not matter. I think I enjoyed a lot of the dialogue in this film. And again, a lot of the big speeches that happen in the film, Theoden's speech, Aragorn's speech at the end. I like Sam's speech at the Crack of Doom, where he's reminiscing about the Shire, and you know, he's saying it's almost springtime and all this stuff. I don't remember where in the books Gandalf's dialogue takes place, where he's talking about Valinor, and he's talking about what lies beyond the sea when he's with Pippin during the siege of Minas Tirith. But I always liked that Gandalf said it. I don't remember who says it now and when it was said throughout the trilogy, but that scene I found particularly beautiful. So for me, it's a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the little things that are said, whether they come straight out of the book or not. I think it was all pretty good.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Theoden's speech when he's riding, you know, up and back when they're preparing to go into battle, that gave me chills. I was like, oh, I would fight for you, Theoden.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
That is a great
no doubt.
Scene.
We'll come back to that in a minute. I think, you know, fortunately, you know, Jackson had good source material to work from for the dialogue, so you know he was able to do good stuff with it. I will say, you know, there are things that I wish he actually had more dialogue with, and I think there probably was room for it. I was a little. I'm very disappointed. I'll say that there's no in the Shelob scenes when Sam comes to the rescue that. And he holds up the field, like we never hear him even say Elbreth Gulthonia. Right? Like there's an opportunity there. There's Elvish elsewhere in the movies, right? You know, there's Elvish spoken elsewhere in the movies.
Well, Frodo says it the first time he likes the vial too.
Yeah. Frodo does say it.
Yeah. But you don't get that. Like you don't.
But Sam doesn't say it.
Well, are we saying he says it in the movie?
No, I'm saying he doesn't say it in the movie, but Frodo does, right?
I don't think. I mean, if he did,
Frodo says it when Shelob first attacks him, or when Shelob's going to attack him, he takes the vial out and he starts quoting. I
remember him muttering
it.
something, but it just didn't. It wasn't very. I couldn't understand it.
that was one of those things where I needed like the subtitles on, and I needed to
Uh-huh.
slow it down to maybe understand what he was saying. Now, at the time that the film came out, I'd never read the book,
Right.
so I didn't have that knowledge of what it was. And even now, I'm thinking, I think Elijah Wood could have sort of spaced out his words. a little
Yes,
bit
no,
better.
I agree. I remember he said something, but if I hadn't read the book, I wouldn't have known what he said.
And I remember that. I remember when he first pulls it out in the film, and I was like, what did he say? Because I was waiting for him to say it to see if, because having read, know what that means and know the deeper significance of that, and having not watched the film since I really dove into that stuff, I was hoping I would pick up on some more of that, but I was like, that didn't sound like it to me. So maybe that's what they intended.
Okay, let me say this.
Yeah.
I don't know that's exactly what he said.
You said
but
it's in the subtitles, right, Josh? Okay.
I just assume that's what he said.
So I guess that's what they intended for him to say, but
And isn't it right before that Galadriel appears to him? Or
Right.
is that later?
it's all part of that.
It's all part of that
All
same
part of
scene.
that whole thing with Shelob.
Okay.
But it's just, to me, like, that is one of the most potent scenes in the entire book, right? And because you have this, it comes from outside of them, right? It comes from outside of them, and Sam doesn't even know like why he starts saying this thing in the book, right?
Right.
But it's obvious when you know the background of it that it's this powerful thing, and so
Inspired, yeah.
I'm just like, I wish that would have been a bigger scene. They just it's kind of glossed over it, and so I have to admit, while I'm pretty happy with the dialogue overall, I'm disappointed by that not being included or by it not being emphasized more, I'll say.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah. No, I would agree.
So, but yeah, I mean, overall, I agree. The dialogue was good. I think as an adapted screenplay, I think they did a good job on the work. So
Yeah.
probably find some other things that I would have liked to be in there, but
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah.
overall, it's there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of parts of talking in the book, so they probably couldn't have done all of that.
No. I think that's what hit me most about watching this movie. I don't know if it's just because we had just finished, reading all three. But I feel like there's just no way that you can encompass this work in a film. There's just no way. And I feel like there's so much that's lost. I think I realized how cerebral the world of Tolkien is, and there's so much that that can't be put into a movie. And so if you just have seen the movies and haven't read the book, you're missing like at least half, if not more, of what Tolkien intended.
Yeah.
I think that's just what that's what really kind of I was like. I mean, the movie was great and I enjoy it and everything, but there's just so much that wasn't included and couldn't have been included just because of how vast Tolkien's mythology, about the world. It kind of showed me how vast Tolkien's world and his philosophy really is. That it just can't be translated into a movie.
Yeah.
It just can't. So in a way, the movie felt a little empty for me, just because we spent all this time discussing and kind of deep diving and everything, and it empty might be too strong of a word, but
I think that's part of adapting it for adapting a screenplay for or adapting a book to a screenplay. You're always going to lose something, and this is a reminder of that. But overall, like, I'll say what I said last time, on For Two Towers. There's no doubt that these are like incredible achievements.
Oh, they
from
are,
Jackson.
and I'm not trying to take away from that at all.
But I will say, and this is a general comment, and I don't know the best way to put this, but I feel like, again, knowing Jackson as a very strongly visual director, and that sounds kind of funny, but I mean, like, he came to popularity and success as a director that was stunning visually, right? And kind of, some I don't know if I ever watched some of his early films, because I don't think they're really my cup of tea, but I know a little bit about them to know that they're like heavy on like really striking visuals, and so I feel like there could have been more done to get a little closer into the heart, into what underlies all of this, like into the heart of the tale, into the background of Middle Earth. When he gazes up at the star, when they see the star in Mordor, right? To give, it's not just this star that just happens to be up there. Like we have a star, like we might look up at a star in our world. It's not a ball of gas. Like that's Tolkien's thing, right? It's not just this ball of gas that's up there and that looks pretty, right? There is a deeper spiritual significance to that star shining upon them at that moment, right? It's a ray of hope to them from a greater supernatural force, that there they are. And I think he does an okay job with it, but it's the same thing with like emphasizing that Elbreth Gulthoniel thing too, right? Giving
a wider perspective on the universe as a whole, or the mythology,
into the deeper things that are going on in the story. I would have liked a little more of that from Jackson's storytelling.
Yeah.
Now he'll probably say like, I have no idea how to do some of that stuff, but that's the thing that I just would have liked to see more of.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's what I was trying to say too.
Yeah.
But,
who are we on? Are we back to me, or are we back to?
I think we're back to you, Josh.
Okay, all right.
But you've been talking a lot, so maybe we should give Josh a chance.
Okay. Josh, do you want to do something else?
Okay, well, I still love the score. Howard Shore did an amazing score for this film.
Yes.
I think his scores are still probably my favorite music scores.
Even more than John
of all
Williams.
time. Yeah, even more John Williams. Particularly The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
Even more than anything
It's
John
brilliant.
Williams
It's
has
so
done.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I the score was great. I thought the musical cues were like perfect reminders of what we had seen in previous films.
Yeah.
And even to the point where it's like, hey, if this new Amazon show wants to use some of these things as leitmotifs, that would be amazing. Because, hey, then you already have a lot of it. And they're all things that would be familiar to probably all the people who are going to be watching this Amazon show.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. So, little side note. So, there's been some news since since our last episode on the Amazon show. So, it's going to be, was it officially? It may not have been officially said, but it was official enough in terms of rumors that the OneRing.net posted this stuff, and they're kind of the biggest, I guess, Tolkien fan site. But they basically have found out from somebody at Amazon that the show is going to focus on pre-Lord of the Rings Aragorn. So that's pretty interesting. I doubt, given that it's pre-Lord of the Rings Aragorn, that Viggo Mortensen is going to play Aragorn.
Yeah, that wouldn't.
But they'll probably have to find a that Viggo Mortensen's the Alden Ehrenreich to Viggo Mortensen's Harrison Ford, for that. So, but that's going to be the focus of those stories. So that's interesting to see if it's going to be, if they're going to try to really reboot completely the cinematic universe that Jackson started, or if they're going to try to be continuous with it, to the point of using the same musical, some of the same musical accompaniments that Shore developed. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about it.
But yeah, I love the music. I do. We didn't watch this all the way through, but I also I love the. And it's not the kind of song I normally listen to, but I really do love the Annie Lennox song they do with "Into the West." We didn't actually watch the credits when we watched the movie last night, so you didn't hear it. But it's for every one of the movies they had kind of a singer do sort of a popular song to a more or less popular song, as popular as you could do with high fantasy, but to kind of accompany it. And so in the Fellowship, it was Enya. They had Enya do had a couple of songs with Enya, right? Really beautiful songs. And then I can't remember the singer who they did for the second one. She's not very well known. But then the third one, they did Annie Lennox, who was the singer for the Eurythmics, and and she sang a song called "Into the West." I'm not sure who it was written by. But I do really like that song, and I think it's a fitting end, like kind of a fitting song to end the trilogy as well, because obviously that's where they're heading, into the West.
Into the West.
So
yeah.
So yeah, any other thoughts on the music from you, Greta?
No, I thought it was beautiful. Yeah, I loved it. I was just perfectly composed and utilized in the film. Yeah, it's just amazing the effect that a good musical score can have.
I think it's interesting. I think in order to make a truly memorable and great movie, you've got to have great music.
I would agree, and of course, I think my favorite is the it's the Shire theme.
Oh yeah,
and I just loved hearing that, and especially in those scenes with Sam and Frodo, and so they draw closer to Mordor, and everything is so dark and gloomy, and then you have that music come in, and you're like, it's so just gives this air of hope to the whole scene. So
right, yeah, definitely. By the way, a little plug for my new book, right? Coming out.
Oh yeah,
soon.
music
Should be out soon. Yeah, on it's on the importance of music in Tolkien's mythological universe,
awesome.
creative universe. So obviously the whole mythology begins in music.
Sure.
Ainulindale,
Yep.
music of the Ainur.
Yep.
So yeah, with Tolkien's work, you better have good music. That's the bottom line. All
This
right.
does not disappoint.
So back to I guess we're up with you.
I feel like I jumped my place in line.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Fine, I'll say something. All right.
Or maybe Josh can say something. I don't know. Someone other than me.
I feel like you keep skipping over me because you're like, well, you've been talking.
Well, you
so.
have been talking a lot. But maybe...
I was riffing on what Josh was saying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right?
Well, go for it. If you have something to say,
You were
say
riffing
it.
on what Josh was saying, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, Josh
What Josh
says
and I
good
said.
stuff. Josh says stuff that's fun to rip off.
Oh, I see how it is. I'll
Riff,
say good stuff.
riff.
All right.
Well, okay, go ahead. Say something. I have nothing to say.
I can't think
I'm
of
just a
anything to say
ripper.
now.
I have none of
All right.
my own original thoughts.
What? Then there's always the lack of 5 chapters at the end of book 6 that didn't make it into Return of the King.
Scouring of the Shire.
But I will preface the rest of this by saying there was no other way that could have been done.
You don't
Yeah.
think so? Well, it couldn't have been done because they killed off Sauron and like the
Saruman.
I keep getting them confused. They killed Saruman off.
They
in,
killed
like, the
killed
first-
off Saruman in the Twin Towers. They killed off Sauron in the Twin Towers, man.
Well, so,
Yeah, at least I said Saruman and not Voldemort. Okay, come on.
That's definitely one of the scenes that's not in the
Yeah.
theatrical version.
Oh, really?
Where he gets
At Isengard?
thrown off and lands
Oh,
on the spike. That's
yeah.
Saruman just kind of disappears from the theatrical versions. He just kind of, there's no
Yeah.
like ending to him.
Is he not in them at all?
No.
He's not in the theatrical.
No.
Well, he's in the
he's
theatrical. He's
not-
in the Two Towers, but he never shows up in.
He never showed up in Return
in
of the
the
King.
theatrical version
Oh.
of Return of the King. I think it's more just because of how they sort of created the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. I mean, if you look at Two Towers novelization, it's or Two Towers, it's the smallest of the 3 books, but it also includes everything that happens to Sam and Frodo basically throughout the first hour and a half of the Return of the King film. Because the Two Towers book ends with Frodo getting kidnapped by the orcs after Shelob.
Right.
So it's more of, in the Two Towers film, I think they wanted to make the central focus about the whole conflict that's happening at Helm's Deep and the conflict the skirmish that happens in Osgiliath with Frodo and Faramir, so that when they get to Return of the King, you don't have all of this extra time to do the scouring of the Shire to get back and firstly come back to Bree, and then from Bree they have to get to the Shire, and then there's all these different things that are happening in the Shire. That could have been a whole hour and a half in and of itself, the way Peter Jackson makes films. And so at that you would need like a mini-series to get this whole thing done.
Yeah.
Right. Or
So
at least
I-
a 4th film. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to 2 thoughts on that. I don't know if this is in the theatrical release, but in the extended version, after Aragorn gets crowned, and then they celebrate the hobbits at Minas Tirith, it kind of does the map. It does the map effect, and shows them like the kind of route that they take back to the Shire, and I do wonder, like, could they have not killed off Saruman there? Done this artificial killing off of Saruman, and instead have actually done just a kind of narrated the scouring of the Shire just briefly, right? Could they have done a thing where it's like, because what they do in the film is they show them coming back, entering into the Shire, and it still looks like it did when they left it instead of being scoured. So I wonder, could they have done something like when we returned and found things had changed, and then just cover it in like a kind of in a narrative fashion,
Kind of
just a
alluded
minute
to
or two.
it, yeah.
Yeah, it might have been challenging, but I don't know. They covered some other significant parts that weren't as important to the plot, especially in the extended version. They kind of do some scenes where it's like, okay, they hit that point, at least. But yeah, forever Tolkien fans will be upset because you don't get the Old Forest and the Fellowship, so no Tom Bombadil, and you don't get the Scouring of the Shire, and all Tolkien fans know that those are important parts of the story.
Yeah, they really are.
The other thing I want to say is that I hope I would love something I've mentioned before, but I would love to see at some point is a mini-series animated version of Lord of the Rings, where they actually hit all of the chapters, and it's more of almost a strict telling of the story, and I feel like that could be a successful thing. I mean, I'm no Hollywood executive, not at all, but I feel like that could be a very successful and cool thing if they ever try to do that. You've got Jackson's films, and it's not to spite Jackson's films, right?
Sure.
But to say, like, I think you could do that and have it be a successful thing and cover some of those things that people have always wanted to see in film version. So
Yeah.
At least in an animated version. Anyway, any thoughts on your part?
No, I agree. I think that without a fourth film, or like Josh said, a miniseries, there probably was no way to get the Scouring of the Shire in there because it was already so long as it was, and plus, they got rid of Saruman. But I feel like it just leaves this hole, like you're kind of like, it feels like a bit anticlimactic.
I think if you don't know, if you don't really know about, if you've never read the book, and then you go and you see the film, I don't think it would feel like a whole. I think it would feel. I think it would feel natural. And again, like, there is a real question about, like, you use the analogy of the Old Forest and Tom Bombadil. Tolkien himself said that Tom Bombadil is not, like, of central importance to the story in a narrative way, right? Mm-hmm. But he still is important to the story. And it's the same thing with the Scouring of the Shire, I think. It's when it comes to the tale that Tolkien wanted to tell, he put these things into the story for a reason. And
right.
So, but I understand why Jackson left them out at the end of the day, and I don't hold a grudge about it. Even though I would love to see, I would have loved to see them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I have two views on that. The first, like with the Tom Bombadil and all that stuff, I think it's more, this is just my reading of it, and maybe this is my Star Wars of it. But those, I feel like every book throughout the trilogy has an episode where it's a sequence of events that doesn't have a whole lot of relevancy to the plot, but it's an important character developing moment. So whatever it is, chapters 4 to chapter 7 in the Fellowship of the Ring, basically from the moment they leave the Shire, none of that is really relevant to the overall plot, but it's this side story for you to get to know the four hobbits better, they have like this small encounter with the universal evil, and it's sort of a preparatory period for them to really start understanding what might come about from going beyond this. And the Scouring of the Shire to me always seemed like an epilogue where it actually is tying up all those loose ends. And so in the books, it makes, in Tolkien's original story, I think it makes complete sense that the Shire was suffering, that war came to the Shire and that they didn't come home to this peaceful land that, is just ignorant of the outside world. Whereas when you're watching it in the film, you get these glimpses or you get these little speeches of things that might happen. Sam still has the moment in the Mirror of Galadriel where he sees the scouring of the Shire, and that's the only real reference you get in the films. Merry and Pippin have that discussion where they're trying to prompt the Ents to join in the war. But you're almost brought to tears when they come back to the Shire. That, wow, we're lucky that they never got to see what we dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they are still so peaceful and they're still so ignorant of the world, and it's a blessing for them that they will never have to know what happened.
Right.
And so that's sort of how I think of it for the film. And I think Tolkien's message was completely different, which is why he has all of that happening, and why you don't really get any of that peace until several years after that. During the final departure. But I think it makes sense for how the story was adapted for the film. I think it would have been great to see some of that.
Yeah.
But then you have to spend another 30 minutes really getting into who a lot of these Hobbit characters are, and there's no Hobbit characters even from the first film that get any sort of relevance at all.
Yeah.
I think names are shouted here and there, but you don't know.
Well, the one they do see is Proudfoot, right? Is the guy with the Hobbit with like the face like the
one who's sweeping, outside.
It always has
the
and I think Farmer Cotton as well early on, but that's if you don't know who these characters are, it doesn't really matter to you.
Whatever happened to Fatty Bulger?
Right.
Yeah. And it happens in the Hobbit films too. Because in the Hobbit films, you just have Bilbo complaining about Lobelia.
Right.
And that's, again, you don't know who Lobelia is. It doesn't really matter to you. And so, basically, I think it would have just been inconsequential to have it. Or to even do like what you were saying, to have this whole exposition through them coming back to the Shire. Because that would have been cool to see Saruman get killed by Wormtongue, and then Wormtongue shot by a bunch of arrows by the hobbits, to really show that they've sort of accepted the reality of it's all this that you would then have needed to have shown.
Yeah.
And so I think it works fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a shame, but
it works
for what it is. Yeah.
It works. But nevertheless, it will always be something that people would love to see.
It really would.
Fans of the books would love to see.
Right. I feel like it also, you see a different side of the hobbits. Of the hobbits that didn't go on the journey. You expect it from Merry and Pippin, and you expect kind of that, that willingness to fight and get back at the evil in the world from the Fellowship hobbits, but not, but so yeah, it would have been nice to see that other development of the characters, the hobbits.
Well, let's talk about Shelob and Shelob's lair, right? I think this is one of the, and of course, this is something that happens in Two Towers in the books, but ends up being like one of the almost near the climax of this film, right? So, like on and on into this film, and I actually think that's okay. So I'll say in terms of that, I think that's okay because Jackson, I think, recognizes that events were happening concurrently, and so you have this long 6 chapters after the destruction of the ring in the book, but in terms of chronologically the events happening, actually he lines them up pretty well in the films, so I think it's okay. I think it's good. Actually, good thing that he did it this way in Return of the King. We're moving it from the end of the Two Towers to Return of the King. Now, Shelob is and Shelob's lair are, I think, pretty masterfully done. I mean, they're just hellish and terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like, my worst nightmare is like dealing with a giant spider. Goodness gracious. Oh my gosh. Like, I hate little spiders, Like a giant spider, are you killing me? Are you kidding me? Like, that would kill me. Like, I would probably just have a heart attack and die. Like, I mean, and I've actually heard Jackson. I think Jackson may actually be an arachnophobe himself.
Oh,
really?
he's very much an arachnophobe.
And so I can't imagine what it took him to have to work on this.
Maybe he delegated that piece to someone else.
I think he talked about. I think I remember way back in the day hearing him talk about like basing it on a certain type of spider, basing Shelob on a certain type of spider that exists. I guess where's he from? Is he from Australia or New Zealand originally? He's from New Zealand.
He's from New Zealand.
Yeah. So I think he was talking about a spider that's indigenous to New Zealand that he remembers from growing up, and how he was just, these things are like, oh, they're just terrifying, and I think he based Shelob on that type of spider. But yeah, this is, I'm so thankful when I saw the movie. I knew it was coming, because if I had not known what was coming, I don't think I could have watched the movie. Like, and now I've seen it so many times, it doesn't bother me that much, but still, it's, man, he did that well. They got this pretty well. No bones about it. So.
I mean, I knew it was coming too, obviously, but when she gets her little stinger out, like I cringe like every time. I think I even had to look away. Like I couldn't deal. Yeah, which shows how well he did it.
Definitely.
That it makes you cringe even though you know it's coming.
Josh, any thoughts on Shelob?
No, I thought the whole Shelob sequence was done very well. I can't remember actually if there were more spiders in the book, but I thought it was done very well. I mean, I'm having in my head. I obviously play a lot of video games, and so I played the recent Shadows of War game. That was the sequel to the Shadows of Mordor game, and Shelob plays a significant part in that game, and I think I liked more that Peter Jackson's Shelob just appeared as a giant spider.
Yeah.
And I think that was menacing enough, as opposed to how in the video game they sort of made her seem more rigid and demonic, something more out of John Howe or Alan Lee's versions of Ungoliant.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's like, if I'm thinking of Ungoliant, I'm thinking specifically of something that is disgusting, and yet this all-powerful demon creature that just so happens to appear as a spider. Whereas Shelob is a spider. He's a really big spider, but she loves a spider.
Right.
Yeah.
And it works just to see a spider like that. The same, I think in the Hobbit films, the spiders of Mirkwood are big spiders, and there's nothing particularly strange about them. They're just very big spiders, and I think that works. I think that's the point. Not everything has to be Peter Jacksonified to be something like Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth or something. And I think that's what they're both really known for, is these super creature designs that are crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I think I liked more that Peter Jackson sort of toned it down and just went with something very straight and basic.
Yeah. Well, and there's a little bit. I mean, obviously the fact that she has a name, and Gollum kind of refers, like the way that just Gollum speaks of her and leading up to it, gives her more than just the beastly. That she's more than just a beast. She does have some kind of personality, but yeah, it's not overdone, and it's. I mean, I could have seen going either way. I'll be honest. There is a little bit of exposition in the book about her descent from Ungoliant. And it calls her an evil thing in spider form, meaning Shelob. So there is. I guess I don't know about the video games, but there is some idea in the book that she is that she has that the spider form is incidental, but at the same time, I don't think she was ever in a different form, right? I think she's always been in spider form, unlike Ungoliant, who kind of took on the spider form
Right.
after we think being like a Maya, or at first, right? Some kind of spirit, some kind of spiritual being that took on that spider form, and then had descendants that were spiders as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you really need to get into all that stuff in the film necessarily. I think it was fine as it was.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
No, I agree. I was wondering, and I just couldn't remember from the book when when Sam finds him, thinks he's dead, and the orcs come.
Mm-hmm.
Sam makes no attempt to remove Frodo, right? He is that true? The book, is that what happens? Because I was a little annoyed by that. I was like, Sam.
Yeah.
I think in the books he assumes that Frodo's dead.
Yeah.
I think he does this. He has the same reaction.
So he doesn't just. So he does just run off when the orcs come.
I mean, I think in the film the only difference is he sort of tries to shake Frodo, and he's unaware that that Shelob can paralyze someone.
Okay.
But I think in the books he just assumes that Frodo's dead, and so he begins moving away as he sees the orcs coming down.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's from the speech of the orcs, and I think he puts on the ring at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the speech of the orcs that he learns, that Frodo's still alive, and now he's left at this point where he has to make a choice to follow the orcs to save Frodo, or return or continue out another way. So
right. Okay. That's what I thought, but I was still annoyed when I saw Sam just give up so easily. I was like, really? You didn't even try to drag him.
What's he supposed to do? Like
drag him to his hiding place with him.
He had no time to work with.
He did have no time. That's true.
He's probably thinking to himself, my best bet. Well, yeah. And to Josh's point, he thinks he's dead. I mean, in the book, he thinks he's dead too.
Yeah.
And so in the book, it actually says it actually clarifies right there that he takes the ring. Sam decides that he has to finish the mission, so he takes the ring.
So he does take the ring at that point.
Yeah.
Because that's not shown.
It's not. In the movie, the narrative, the way they do it is they don't let the audience know that Sam takes the ring until he rescues Frodo.
Right, because I remember being confused by that watching the movie, because after he's rescued Frodo, and they're and Frodo tells Sam, "Oh, I lost it," and Sam's like, "Nope, it's right here," and I was like, and then he says something like, "When I thought I'd lost you, I decided to carry it," or something like that, and I was like, when did that happen? So.
Right.
Anyway, but now I get that it was meant to be.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, Sam was faced with a pretty significant dilemma.
No, he does great. He does absolutely great. I'm not trying to make Sam feel bad. I just would have liked to have seen him try a little harder.
Yeah.
To at least preserve the body. But anyway.
One criticism I'll have is and I think this continues out throughout all the films for me, is maybe in this one it's a little bit more significant than the other ones, but distances. Just kind of philosophically, I love the way Tolkien makes you feel the distance between different spots in the story, and I had even forgotten it from having the last time I'd read through the Lord of the Rings before our most previous read through. But they feel really compressed. Distances feel really compressed in the films. The only time it doesn't is when they're lighting the beacons and you see it traverse over all these mountain ranges. I think that's a really cool scene. But otherwise, it feels like everything's just around the corner from everything else. And they do mention having. I was
gonna say they mentioned it being 3 days ride.
But then it doesn't ever really feel like that. Even traveling from Minas Tirith to the Black Gate.
Traveling scenes.
Yeah, exactly. All you have to do is throw in some good traveling scenes, and it feels.
Which I actually think is part of why the Two Towers took so long as a film, is because you have. I think there's very early moments with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli going across Rohan, and it's great scenes of New Zealand, but that's like 10 minutes of them going across.
Yeah.
And then during the battle getting to Helm's Deep, Aragorn is thrown off the cliff, and then there's another 10 minutes of him going across Rohan to get into Helm's Deep.
Right.
So, there's not a lot of the traveling, and that's why the Two Towers feel so long, that there's so much, and then you get to Return of the King, and when the people of Rohan leave Edoras, they are they're I think it's like Dunharrow or something, but they're all stationed there.
Yeah.
And nobody's moving there. And then Aragorn goes to leave, and he goes to the Path of the Dead. The next scene is all the warriors of Rohan getting together and leaving, but there is no... Once you see them leaving, you don't see them again until Pelennor Fields, where they just happen to be there,
right.
Which you could only assume is after, you get an understanding of time, you don't get an understanding of distance in the film. Because the siege of Minas Tirith is going about, I think, 2 days or so by the time that Pelennor Fields happens. So I definitely understand that. That and a lot of with like another moment for you to have it is in Minas Morgul, where Frodo and Sam are climbing up the steps to go through Shelob's cave, and all of the armies of Mordor are coming out of Minas Morgul, and you're seeing this massive army, but every time you see the army, you're still following Frodo and Sam, who are going higher, but they're not going further out anywhere.
Right.
So I definitely understand that. It does make things seem a little bit too instantaneous.
Yeah.
That things popping in from one scene to the next, and the sense of urgency is there, but it's not felt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
I'm glad you brought up Minas Morgul. I might have forgotten that. So I love the way they portray Minas Morgul, and the marching out of the army from Minas Morgul. It's weird to me that they're such bad guards that they don't notice Frodo coming right up to the doorstep and being like, "Here I am," like, man, I thought you all were like vigilant over there, like, wait. So it's just funny to me that like he's like, "Here I am," and then like Sam and Gollum are like, "No, don't do it!" like loud, and they have to drag him off the path right as the gates open. Like, seriously, no one was watching. Like,
Yeah.
Maybe they're too busy getting ready to march out. They're getting their gear on and stuff.
I guess they were making sure they were dressed right for marching out.
Yeah. But see, speaking of distances, I feel like that again. That's one of the things. Like, I just don't know how they could have really,
Oh, well, I think they did an okay job though in like Fellowship and
like
Two
Josh
Towers.
said, that's like
Josh
takes a ton of time.
It does, but and again, it didn't like ruin the movie for me or anything like that. But I just it's something that it's one of the things that I love, and I feel like a lot of people love about Tolkien stories is that sense of depth and distance. And in a world where everything is just around the corner for us, like that's an aspect of escape, right? From this world. That's an aspect of Tolkien's fantasy that is so alluring and so appealing, right?
Is the expanse.
Is you feel like here's a world you can actually get lost in,
right? No,
as opposed to the world we live in today, which is everything's just around the corner.
I wonder if Jackson may have been trying to allude to that too, just in the through flight, like all the flying creatures in the in the Nazgul and the eagles. You kind of get a sense through flight of distance, I think. So.
Well, and like I was saying, the beacon scene.
Yeah, the beacon scene
does
really
a good
too.
job of like covering, showing that it's a long distance that's being covered from Gondor to Rohan.
Right.
Well, you do have the scene of Gandalf and Pippin going to Minas Tirith, and again, you don't get a sense of distance because the camera doesn't pull out enough for you to actually see the whole landscape that they're going through.
Right.
They leave, and you get the one clip where they're rushing through a forest at night, and by the time the next scene happens, they're already in front of Minas Tirith. And I think it's, I guess the only way you can, this is ironic, the only way you can think of this is Peter Jackson's not trying to string the story along, he's trying to get it moving. which, despite the fact that he has a 3-hour film at the theatrical release,
I wonder,
But-
that's interesting. I wonder if they had made this movie 10 years later, if they would have done Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and then Return of the King Part 1 and Return of the King Part 2.
Well, that's what
Like-
they did with The Hobbit.
like-
I mean, they made The Hobbit, what, 3 or 4 movies?
No, they did it with, remember that's
They did
what
with
they
Harry
did
Potter.
with Harry Potter, right? They
Oh,
took the
right.
last book and broke
Made
it up
it
into 2
2 parts.
parts,
And they,
right?
they were going to do that with The Order of the Phoenix, because The Order of the Phoenix is the largest book, and they thought about it and they said, no, we're just going to cut half the book away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's and I think that was the first like big movie franchise they did that with, where they broke up a one book
That's
into
a
2
good
parts.
thought. So maybe it just wasn't,
But I feel like they've done that. I never saw these movies, but I know they did that with the Twilight movies
Oh,
and
did
the
they?
And they also did it with the Hunger Games.
they did it with
movies.
The Hunger Games. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it would have been Part 1, Return of the King, Part 2, The War of the Ring.
Right.
That's how they could have gotten all of these
Yes.
other names for these things done.
That's
Totally.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm thinking about the time distance thing, and I know neither of you have an interest in Game of Thrones, but when you read Game of Thrones, every chapter is a character perspective. So you don't understand, you have no aspect of time unless you know the following chapter is in continuation of the previous one. And so you'll have certain chapters that are either happening concurrently or happening weeks later, and you have no idea of what's happening in between that until maybe a completely different chapter in between those 2 chapters is like, well, 4 weeks ago, the lord of this castle went over here, and you're getting the result of that 3 chapters later, or 2 chapters before then. You're completely confused. But I believe it was last season of Game of Thrones, there was a lot of complaining that characters were teleporting all over the show.
Oh yeah.
Because there was one episode where a character had gone across the country and back, I think within 15 minutes. And another character went to the northern part of the country and came back, and then went south and came back, all within the same hour time span. It's really like I
It's
get
a
it.
challenge. It's a narrative challenge for
because you're trying to explain so much, and you're trying to really get in all of the necessary parts, but you're almost doing it in an excessively callous way where you have the audience really thinking, how is this happening?
Well, and I can get like for a lot of story. I mean, that's obviously you're dealing with fiction. Like you're dealing with stories they're not real, and there's always going to be license that's taken in a narrative fashion to tell the story in the way you feel is best as the writer, and you open yourself up to criticism by doing that. But with Tolkien, it's such a deliberate thing, right? That when he wrote the story, he wanted this aspect of it to definitely seem more real, right? And he felt like that was important to it being a successful work of a successful fairy story, right?
Right.
Really.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, didn't ruin the movie for me, but just something I'll point out again is something that I love about Tolkien, and I didn't feel like was as successful in this movie as maybe the other 2. Let's see. I'll come back to the ride of the Rohirrim. I know you mentioned that earlier, Josh, but I think Minas Tirith, the Pelennor Fields, the ride of the Rohirrim, all of that I think is done very well. Not there you can quibble with some things, but the overall just epicness of the battle, and I always kind of tear up with the ride of the Rohirrim after the speech, and then the music and all that kind of stuff happening as they're like charging headlong. Especially if you know more from the books about the story of the Rohirrim and just kind of their noble heart, and their willingness to sacrifice themselves for the sake of honor and of duty and of friendship. It's just a beautiful. It's this beautiful thing, right? Where they know they're riding to their death, but they ride nonetheless, right?
They ride nobly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing that spirit, that spirit was a very important thing for Tolkien as well, right? Just that spirit of, I guess what he'd probably call like the pre-Christian sort of barbarian peoples of Europe, right? Just their when he talks in Beowulf in his essay on Beowulf, he talks some about the spirit of like not knowing what lies beyond the darkness, but nevertheless fighting against it, right?
Yeah.
So I think Jackson does a great job with the Ride of the Rohirrim and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields.
Yeah, I agree, and I love the Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli's trip to the paths of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I love how they did that. I now, as I watched, I was thinking of the Harrowing of Hell because I remember talking about that one of our episodes. But I just love that. I thought that was really, really well done with having that army show up at the last minute, and just the visual effect of that I thought was awesome.
Yeah, most definitely. Definitely. What about the destruction of the ring? What did y'all think of the scene with the destruction of the ring?
I thought it was well done.
Yeah.
I really do. You can really sense Sam's frustration and just drop the dang thing in the fire. Like, you're right there. Just do it. But I mean, it was pretty true. It was true to the book, right?
Yeah.
I mean, almost to the letter.
Yeah, pretty true. Yeah.
As far as it all
I
happened.
couldn't find anything to quibble with in it.
Yeah. What do you think, Josh? Destruction of the ring?
No, I had no problem with that scene. I thought it was again, when I first saw the film, I'd never read the book, so I was just like, oh, this is ironic, but
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I that's the point of it, and I think it was done really well. I mean, it again, for somebody who never read the book at the time, it's almost a surprise when you have you can, and not a surprise of Frodo's decision, but a surprise of what happens immediately after Frodo's decision. That you have Gollum come back, you have Gollum, you have Gollum and Frodo wrestling for the ring, and it's evil destroying itself with Gollum's greed really taking over, and he's completely unaware of what's happening, and so he's happy in his last moments until his death, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
Oh, let's see here.
And what I really love too, also, I love the how they showed, because when that happens concurrently, the battle is still raging on, right? With what battle is it at that point where they draw the eye away? Is it still the same?
It's the Black Gate.
It's the Black Gate.
Yeah.
And they see the effect, right? Like the immediate effect of the ring being destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It shows, obviously the effect of things tumbling down, Mordor collapsing and everything. But then it shows, even the people that are in the battle who are not right there, they know.
Mm-hmm.
They know that something big has happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just it does a really good job of showing the overarching effect.
Of course, in the book, Sauron kind of goes out with more of a whimper than this big cataclysmic destruction.
Oh, that's true.
Right? It's kind of this spirit, this cloudy thing kind of being lifted. I mean, I think there is some cataclysmic sort of stuff, but in the end, it's this.
Oh yeah, it's not like in
vapor.
the film where Barad-dûr's falling down and Rodrim is erupting and basically the whole land area of Mordor starts collapsing in on itself and
right.
But again, I think that's
it's fine. I know why they did it that way.
Yeah, it's to further imply the epicness of the whole thing,
Right.
I mean, still, the highlight of the film is Pelennor Fields, but you need something to equivocate at the end of the film to, hey, you know what? We won. We did it. Mm-hmm. And we need to show it in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, in the book, Aragorn does not just willy-nilly behead the mouth of Sauron like he does in the movie. I see why they did that, because the mouth of Sauron is obviously a character that we probably all want to just behead and be done with it. But Aragorn is he's just better than that, right? In reality, the way Tolkien wrote him, he's the character. So I get why they did it. It's not a big deal to me, but I don't know if you've seen this scene, Josh. I think it's only in the extended version, but with the mouth of Sauron.
Yeah, I've seen the scene. outside of the film.
Yeah. So he just gets tired of the mouth of Sauron basically, and just just chops his head off in the movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that in the book. So, but whatever. An interesting thing I actually read. Aragorn fights this troll at the Black Gate. Right. When he's fighting all the other stuff, he's fighting this big troll. Apparently, that was originally filmed to be Sauron that he was fighting. And
I don't even think it was original. I think Sauron comes out as, I don't want to say he comes out as Anatar, but I think he comes out in one of his different forms.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that the book obviously never disproves and the film never claims is Sauron has always had a body.
Yeah.
In the film, they make it seem like he's just this spectral being who's trying to reclaim himself. But in the books, I think he fights. Now I have to look this up.
Well,
I know he fights an aspect of Sauron.
Yeah, in the.
So wait, where is he portrayed in the movie? I may have missed this.
Well, he's never portrayed as like an active, embodied character in the movie, right? He is, the only times he is when he gets attacked, when he fights in the, what is it, the Last Alliance, right? At the battle, the ancient battle that they talk about at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. He comes out in his embodied form, but he loses his body when he's killed by a Isildur there, or fights with the Isildur there. I'm trying to find this thing where I saw about because I think it was in the Wikipedia article. I read it. It talks about that when they filmed it, they actually had Sauron fighting with Aragorn, and they decided to. Oh, here we go. Jackson eventually realized that there was an even larger change plan. Sauron himself would come out in physical form to battle Aragorn, who would only be saved in the destruction of the ring. Jackson eventually realized it ignored the point of Aragorn's true bravery in distracting Sauron's army against overwhelming odds, and a computer-generated troll was placed over footage of Sauron in the finished film. In the book, after the destruction of the ring, the spirit of... so we got that black cloud. But anyway, so apparently it's kind of like the... Josh, I think it's kind of like the original Jabba the Hutt scene, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got the humanoid Jabba the Hutt, right, that was filmed, and then they placed later on they changed who Jabba the Hutt was and placed a slug over him. And I think I think they did the same thing with Sauron here. Apparently, placed a troll over him. They decided not to use him. So interesting little note there. All right, well, last call. Anything? Any other big things y'all wanted to discuss, or little things to mention before we call it a wrap?
I thought the end was really moving and good. When Frodo and Bilbo move off, to take the ship across the sea. But I do feel like that would have been better if they had the whole scouring of the Shire, because it seems all kind of sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would Frodo want to leave? Like, this looks like a very happy, like, safe place. Why is he leaving? Like, I mean, I know he says, the Shire has been safe, but not for me. I know he gets that, and I know that there's some allusion, his wound hurting and things like that. But you kind of, I felt like, maybe people would be wondering if they hadn't read the book. Why is he leaving?
Yeah.
Like, he's probably suffering from PTSD. Like, but he'll get over it. Like, why doesn't he stay with Sam?
Yeah.
So I feel like that. I think that scene would have made a whole lot been more impactful if we'd had the scouring of the Shire in there. But I thought it was beautiful, nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was happy with it. I mean, maybe I always love there to be more exposition of what's going on and where they're going and that sort of thing. There's not that much. There's really not that much in the book, but maybe the only thing that would have been neat. Now they end it just as the book ends. So to be fair, he ends it. The final words are Sam saying, "Well, I'm back." And I do love I do think ultimately, even though there was the epilogue that was cut, that Tolkien had intended, I've always liked that ending to the book. It's just a very fitting end with Sam having those simple words, right?
Yeah.
And Sam growing into being such an important part of the story. Maybe it would have been cool to see, to have Sam narrate, like say that, and then narrate what happens to, eventually what happens to like Legolas and Gimli and Aragorn, and then talk about his own passage over the sea eventually, but not the end of the world.
Yeah. Agreed. What about you, Josh?
I think for me, again, I was young when I saw the film. I had no idea what the ending meant for the film. I still don't know that I would say that someone who's read the book understands what's happening. I think that's one of the only real scenes in the Return of the King book where if you don't know the Silmarillion, you don't get it.
Yeah.
You sort of have this idea, and again, in the books they make it so much more clear that that the world of Tolkien's Legendarium is more than just the Shire and Rohan and Arnor and all these places that we're connected to just for the trilogy. But even then, in the books, that's the prompt for you to go read the Silmarillion to really understand, well, what exactly is out west, or what does that mean, or because if you just read the books, you can view it as being a simple metaphor, although it's not, because clearly there is something out towards the west that all these characters are going to. They name it as such, but it's more than just what your idea is in your head. But you need to have the Silmarillion, you need to have all of these other parts to really understand what that means and to really get the significance of why these individual characters are leaving and why these individual characters are returning or going for the first time, or sort of setting their fate towards basically God's grace. And so I think it's a great scene, but I think if you've just seen the film, you don't really get it.
Yeah.
You're probably sitting there saying, well, I guess they're going to die or something, like, or again, it's like this is their death and they're moving on and so on and so forth. But I think it's unclear in the books. I think the books give you enough of an introduction or enough references back to other works in Tolkien that if you're not already aware of it, you're going to want to pursue and you're going to want to learn. Elbereth is all over the place in Lord of the Rings. You're going to want to learn exactly who that is, and by doing so, you're going to learn about the other Valar, and then you're going to continue downwards, learn about Valinor and learning about Beleriand, and then at one point or another, you're going to have the Silmarillion in your hand, trying to figure all these things out.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of the same with the Two Towers film, where for me the deleted scene, the extended scene where Eowyn learns who Aragorn is and that he's a Númenórean, and you're like, okay, I guess you.
What
live.
is that?
Yeah. You're thinking, I guess you are a for lack of a better word, you're a different subspecies of human. But you don't know what that means unless you've read Akalabeth and you've read the Unfinished Tales and all of these other relevant works. And so I think the films do well to not just showcase the Lord of the Rings, or the majority of the Lord of the Rings. It does well to promote looking more into Tolkien's work. But again, even if you're just reading the book, I think the Grey Havens chapter is left so ambiguously that you need to go look for these things to really understand what's happening.
Well, and I'll say, like, the at the end of the day, like, that's one of the things I'm most grateful for Jackson's films. One of the things for which I'm most grateful for Jackson's films is that they got me into the world in the first place.
Right, I think they got a lot of people into the world.
And a lot of people, I think they're highly enjoyable in and of themselves. I think great films. I
Yeah.
would agree with the Academy Awards on that front. Imperfect, but great films.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, I hope for most viewers it leads them into at least reading the actual Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And beyond that, I hope for a lot of people into reading the Silmarillion, and I think it has. And it would be interesting to. I'd be interested if there's been studies done on that. If readership
The
has
demographic
increased,
of readers has
has
increased.
since the films came out. I've got to imagine it has.
I can't. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it must have.
Yeah.
It must have. Maybe not. Maybe not everyone reads Lord of the Rings and then goes and investigates the Silmarillion and
Right.
all the other more.
No, I think it's a culture that's developed. At least in my life, primarily through Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I was 7 when Harry Potter came out. I got home from the movie theater. My mom handed me the book, and Harry Potter, the series, is what got me interested in reading books. And I could only suspect that that's what happened. That's what had happened with basically every book to movie adaptation, book to TV show adaptation. I'm sure hundreds of people have read A Song of Ice and Fire because they saw season 1 of Game of Thrones. I've continued to read Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series because I love the show Outlander so much. So I think that's a natural development of what
Yeah.
of what's been going on.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, right
Yeah.
on. All right. Well, I think let's call it a wrap at
No,
that
I
one.
think that was
Josh,
pretty inclusive. Yeah.
thanks so much for
Yes,
joining us.
thank you,
really
Josh.
Appreciate
No,
it.
not a problem. I
seeing you
really
again.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. So, a couple of final words. So, as I mentioned, we'll have more info soon about the plan for the Hobbit, for discussing the Hobbit. I'd say stay tuned over the next few weeks to learn more. The best places to keep in touch. I will try to get notes up as I have official announcements on the podcast feed, but the place I post most is on Facebook. But I'll try to be better about getting news to Josh too for Twitter as well. Maybe make a little resolution to be a little more in touch with my own Twitter account as well, for my legions of followers on Twitter. But no, I'll try to have a couple more spots to get the word out for folks as they want to learn more about what we're doing with the Hobbit. This will be the last episode for our kind of connected to the Patreon account I've been running over the last year. I made the decision to shut that down just for various reasons. You can go back and find out why that was. But I want to say a special thanks to everyone who has been a patron, is still a patron or has been a patron over the last year. I just very much appreciate everyone, including you, Josh, who has contributed financially to running the podcast. It's been a real blessing. Very grateful. It's been the wind in the sails at a lot of times when it was kind of hard to keep the pace. So just very thankful for everyone there. So, and I'll give the list as we have it right now for our final list. Executive producer David Dickinson, and as well as Shannon Stockbridge, superfan Josh Sosa, Brian Orr, Margaret Lyon, Emilio Perea, James Applegate, Caitlin Fascista, Zeke Farmer, Matt Scarrance, Al Taylor, Per Brenner, James Lidberg, Chris Loftus, Lawrence McGowan, Richard Wall, Spencer Foger, Dr. William Hutton, Chuck Farnung, Travis Lawheed, Eric Bissett, and Stefan. And again, thank you to all of you.
Thank you, guys.
And appreciate you all being part of that experiment and supporting the podcast for that period of time.
Yes,
So.
very much. Thank you.
And last but not least, thanks for everybody, whoever's listening, for listening.
Thank you, guys.
And we will talk at you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Please remember to check out truemyths.org and tolkienroad.com for show notes and plenty of other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, would you please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes? It's a great way to support the show and takes less than a minute. Stay tuned to our podcast feed and social media pages over the next few weeks for more information on our upcoming chapter-by-chapter discussion of The Hobbit. Also, please send correspondence to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, the road goes ever on.